We'll be there tomorrow at 9 a.m. with 20 people. Hope you've got enough pillows. That was it. No hello? No how's the house? Just Laura's voice on speaker. Sharp and bright, like she was confirming a hotel reservation. I stared at the phone on the kitchen counter, the call still active, but the conversation over. 5 hours. That's how long we'd had peace. 5 hours since Henry and I unlocked the door to the lake house we'd dreamed about for nearly 2 decades. I hadn't even unpacked my coffee mugs. The cushions still smelled like cardboard and factory dye. The lake outside shimmered like a promise, quiet, unbothered, distant from everything that used to press in on us. I'd imagined waking up to birdsong, falling asleep to frog song, and maybe a weekend of nothing but paperback novels and silence. Not 20 uninvited guests and a daughter-in-law who treated my home like an Airbnb she didn't have to pay for. Henry was still outside sweeping the porch steps. I didn't call him in. I didn't need to. When he walked through the front door and saw my face, he paused, leaned on the frame, and waited. She said they're coming tomorrow, I said. 9 in the morning, 20 people. He didn't flinch. Did she ask no? I said quietly. She told. He nodded slowly. That sounds like her. It wasn't the first time Laura had spoken like that. Always efficient, always cheerful, but never with kindness. Her words arrived in sentences that didn't bend, only landed. And this one, it flattened me. She said they're bringing snacks, I added hollow. Henry chuckled once under his breath, but not because it was funny. It was the kind of laugh people let out when there's nothing left to say. He set the broom against the wall and walked over to the table where our unopened mail still sat in a neat stack. He picked up the top envelope, then looked at me. Do you want to pack or plan? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I pulled out a chair and sat down. My coffee had gone cold. I picked it up anyway. Tomorrow wasn't going to wait. Laura never yelled. She didn't have to. Her tone was sharp enough to cut. Quick-clipped, just polite enough for outsiders to mistake it for kindness, but always meant to shut a conversation down, never open one. Every sentence sounded like a calendar reminder, not a check-in, not a suggestion, a timed directive. I remember the first time I truly felt it. Thanksgiving 8 years ago. I brought my sweet potato casserole, the one the whole family used to look forward to. Laura opened the door, glanced at the dish, and said, "Oh, we're doing lighter sides this year. The kids are cutting back on sugar." She took it from my hands without looking at me and turned back into the kitchen. That casserole never made it to the table. 3 days later, I found it still wrapped, sitting quietly on top of the dryer when I stopped by to return the mixing bowls she'd borrowed. And that wasn't even the worst of it. 1 year for her birthday, I spent a week knitting her a scarf, blue and silver, the colors she once said she liked. Laura opened the gift in front of everyone, gave a half-hearted nod, set the scarf on the kitchen counter, and moved on to the next package. It stayed there the entire evening. When I left, it was untouched. Laura has never once called me Mom. Not once. Always Merlene flat and distant, like I was an old acquaintance, nothing more. Even the grandkids mirrored that energy. Their greetings felt rehearsed. One hug, one quick hi, then off to the TV or a tablet. Never real warmth. I've never been part of their rhythm. I was a placeholder, called in when needed, dismissed when done. Henry always noticed, but he never said much. And me, I didn't complain either. I told myself, she's just busy. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. That's just how younger people are. But this house, this one, is different. This house has our names on it. And that tone, that voice that treated me like staff, would not cross this threshold without a cost. Henry picked up the notebook. I reached for the pen. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from being dismissed. So often you forget what your voice used to sound like. I'd been living inside that silence for longer than I care to admit. I used to think Laura just didn't notice me, that it was unintentional, that maybe she was too busy or too tired. But looking back, no, it wasn't that. It was intentional, polished, practiced. The signs were all there. The casserole she brushed off, the scarf she never wore, the gift she said she'd sort later. But there was one moment that stayed with me even after all the others started to blur. It was the summer Henry had surgery. I stayed in that hospital room 3 nights in a row. I adjusted every blanket, memorized every medication. I read to him while he slept and held his hand through the nausea and the pain. Laura never came, not once. No check-in, no call. My son had said, "She's got a lot on her plate right now." But so did I. I just chose to stay. That was the moment something shifted, not loud, not obvious, but enough. I didn't cry about it. I didn't rant. I just started seeing clearly. So now, sitting in our new kitchen, the lake glinting outside the window, and Henry flipping through an old receipt book, looking for blank pages, I felt something different settle inside me. I wasn't angry. I was done. I reached for the coffee pot, poured 2 cups, sat down across from him. "She's coming tomorrow," I said. Henry looked up. 20 people, he added. I nodded. For a while, we said nothing. Then Henry slid the notebook across the table. I didn't write anything yet. I just rested my hand on it. We weren't making a list today. We were drawing a line. Henry stood by the sink, drying the same mug twice. The silence between us wasn't cold, it was loaded. I sat at the kitchen table, my hand still resting on the notepad he had pushed toward me, the same yellow-lined one I used to write grocery lists. Now it stared at me like a question. Was I really doing this? I thought about Christmas, when Laura said the kids already had too much stuff, about the scarf that stayed folded on the counter, about the silence in the hospital room when Henry was recovering and she never came. Yes, I was doing this. Still, my hand trembled for a second before I wrote the first line. Hotel reservation, 2 nights. Pack light. Leave house keys on the counter. Print rental agreement. Don't explain. Henry didn't speak. He just poured me a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. He added 1 line to the list. No guilt. That one hit harder than the rest. I don't want to make a scene, I whispered. You're not, he said gently. You're leaving the stage. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. That's not who we are. But I felt something shift in the room, like we'd both finally stepped into the same rhythm again after years of tiptoeing around the same silence. I packed the suitcase slowly. Pajamas, walking shoes, toothbrush, the scarf. Not to give it another chance, but to remind myself I tried. By the time the sun set, the house was still. I left the folded contract by the front door. It wasn't loud, but it said everything. We didn't speak again until bedtime. Henry turned off the last light and said quietly, "It's okay to take care of yourself." And for the first time in years, I believed him. Here is the English translation of Chapter 5, fully adapted for tone logic and natural character dynamics, with all pronouns and relationships corrected for consistency. 10 a.m. The first sound was tires grinding over gravel. Then came car doors slamming, laughter, growing louder, voices shouting across the driveway. I pulled back the kitchen curtain. 5 cars, packed with people. Henry rested his hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. I gave a small nod. The coffee in my hands was still warm, but my heart had gone cold the night before. Laura stepped out of the first car. Shorts, sneakers, sunglasses perched on her head. One hand dragging a suitcase, the other clutching a clipboard. Behind her came our son, the kids her parents, and at least a dozen more. Strangers to me. She didn't knock. She pushed the front door open and barked orders like a drill sergeant. Okay, my parents take the master. Kids upstairs, Travis and Emily by the guest bath, baby needs a changing station. Mom. Where's the folding bed? She called me Mom, but her tone had no warmth. It was the kind of mom you use when someone owes you something. I didn't answer. Henry stepped forward. Calm, steady. He handed her a folder. Laura stopped confused and opened it. What is this rental agreement? Henry said. His voice was level firm. She skimmed the page and let out a dry laugh. You're joking. I told you we were coming. No one's joking, I replied. And you didn't ask. You announced. The footsteps behind her slowed. Someone whispered. A child asked, Why aren't we going inside? Laura clenched the paper in her hand. Are you seriously doing this? You're canceling our family vacation. I looked her in the eye. This isn't a family vacation. This is our home. And today, we need it quiet. Henry opened the back door. A breeze swept in, cool and clean. I picked up my suitcase already packed and walked out onto the porch. Behind me was chaos. Ahead of me, peace. Duoi jai la banju chin, lai chong six, bang tieng an voiksong, ho hop, li hon logic, nan vat, ro rang jong, toi van gyu jung, gyong van va kam suk, ban ja ksai, dung tu jiao. But I told you, we were coming. Laura snapped, still holding the rental contract, like it was some kind of joke. I looked her in the eye. Exactly. You told? You didn't ask. That landed harder than she expected. For the first time in years, Laura didn't have a response ready. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her sunglasses slid down the bridge of her nose, but she didn't push them back up. Behind her, the noise had quieted. One of the uncles had a cooler half raised. A teenage girl stared at her phone like she suddenly didn't want to be there. A child whispered, Why aren't we going in? Laura's husband. My son finally stepped forward, shoulders tense. Mom, maybe this isn't necessary, he said quietly. I turned to him. You really think this is unnecessary? After everything? He didn't answer. Just looked down, like the gravel had something urgent to say. Laura let out a breathy laugh, sharp and shallow. So that's it. You're leaving. Letting us stand here like fools. No, I said, stepping forward. I'm letting you feel what it's like when you don't get to decide everything. Her jaw clenched. This was supposed to be a family trip. I met her glare without blinking. This isn't a hotel. It's our home. And you treated it like a discount resort. Henry walked past her, opened the trunk, and waited. He didn't have to say anything. Laura looked to her husband, expecting him to step in. He didn't. I turned back one last time. You want to know what changed? Nothing. That's the problem. Then I picked up my suitcase, walked down the steps, and got into the car. Henry closed the trunk gently and got in beside me. The engine started without hurry. Through the mirror, I watched Laura on the porch contract, in hand sunglasses crooked, and for once unsure of what to say. And behind her, all the noise she brought began to fade. The tires crunched over gravel as we pulled away. I didn't look back at the porch until the bend in the road forced me to. Laura was still there, contract in one hand, clipboard in the other, her family milling behind her without direction. She looked smaller than she ever had, yet still dangerous in her silence. Henry kept his eyes on the road. After a mile, he said quietly, Do you think we went too far? I shook my head, though the question lingered in me. No, I said. We finally drew a line. That's all. The inn was 20 minutes away, tucked back from the highway. When we stepped inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and cinnamon, and a fire burned in the small hearth. The quiet pressed in around us, almost startling after the morning's chaos. Henry carried our bags up to the room. I sat down on the bed, phone still in my hand. For a few minutes, nothing came. No buzzing. No calls. Just silence. Then it started. What happened? The kids are upset. You embarrassed us. I read them all one after another. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have explained. I could have reminded her of every dismissal, every insult. but explanations had never mattered before. They weren't meant to. Henry returned with 2 mugs of coffee. "She texted," he asked. I nodded. 3 times already. He set the mugs down, and I turned the phone face down. And nothing. Not this time. Henry studied me for a moment, then reached for his book. He didn't argue. That meant more than I could say. I leaned back, letting the warmth of the coffee seep into my hands. The fire downstairs cracked softly. Outside, the wind brushed against the shutters. For the first time in years, the noise wasn't ours to manage. Later, when Henry fell asleep with his glasses still on, I slipped my phone into the nightstand drawer. The buzzing came again, muffled, but I left it there. Silence, this time, was not absence. It was a choice. By the 3rd night, the phone was no longer a threat, just another object in the drawer. I left it there next to the novel I hadn't opened. Some silences are more instructive than any words. Then sometime after dinner, a message lit the screen. "Mom? Can we talk?" Not "we need to talk." Not "call me." Just that small. Careful. Like someone testing a floorboard. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I wasn't ready. For once he could wait. A few minutes later, another line appeared. "I didn't know she planned all that. I'm sorry." Still, I said nothing. I set the phone face down, took a long sip of my coffee, and listened to the logs shift in the fireplace. That warmth earned solid mine. Eventually it rang. I let it go to voicemail. Then on the second try, I answered. His voice was low. "I'm alone," he said quickly. "Just me." There was a pause, too long, and then I should have called earlier. She told me that morning. I didn't argue. I should have. I know that. No excuses, but no courage either. Just confession. "I miss you." "So do the kids. They keep asking when we'll see you again." I leaned back in the chair. "That's not a decision Laura can make for you anymore," I said. My voice came out clearer than I expected, but don't call me hoping this gets patched with one apology. "I'm not," he said. I wanted to hear your voice." "That's all?" Another pause. I could feel his uncertainty, new raw. "Do you even want to see us?" he asked. "I want to be seen," I answered. "Not scheduled, not used. Seen." He whispered, "I understand. But understanding is easy. Change is hard." "I'll think about it," I said. "That's the best I can do right now." After the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just slid the phone back into the drawer untouched again. Another message appeared from Laura. I didn't open it. The logs cracked in the fire. The quiet stayed with me, earned solid mine. Laura's last message was short. "You made us look bad in front of everyone." No apology, no regret, just image control. I didn't reply. I looked at the message for a second, then turned the phone over and left it face down on the nightstand. The fire in the room crackled gently. Henry was flipping through a magazine by the window. That silence, we'd earned it. I used to think silence was a punishment. Now I understood it could also be a boundary. One I had every right to draw. For years I had filled the gaps, brought food, shared stories, made crafts with the grandkids, while their parents scrolled on phones. And in return, Laura handed me folded towels and lists of rules. Don't bring sugar. Don't stay too long. Don't make it about you. The day I brought pinecone animals for the kids, she asked me to double-check they didn't leave socks behind. That was my reward for showing up. But this time, I didn't show up. I didn't cook or clean or offer warm smiles to cold stares. And that's what made her angry. Not because I embarrassed her, but because I didn't serve her story. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me who stayed quiet, carried weight that wasn't hers, and folded her needs into small corners. But that version is gone now. I sipped my coffee. It was just how I liked it, hot, black, and my own. No one rolled their eyes at the mug I used. No one asked me to get up and help. No one told me to shrink myself. Let them sit with their discomfort. For once, I wouldn't clean it up for them. 15 days passed. Not in anger, not in silence. Just space. I spent the first few mornings waking early, walking down the hill behind the inn, and letting the cold settle into my chest before the coffee warmed it away. I didn't call. I didn't text. I let the air do what words never could, clear the fog of being needed, but never seen. On day 11, my son sent a message. Thinking of you. Hope you're okay. I didn't answer. Not out of punishment, but because I wasn't ready. Not yet. By day 15, Henry and I packed the car and returned to the lake house. The porch was still swept, the windows clean. No surprise visitors. No forgotten shoes or empty juice boxes. The house had held its breath in our absence and was waiting now to exhale with us. Inside, I took my time. I lit a candle. I changed the bedsheets. I made coffee and sat on the edge of the bed where I used to lie awake, wondering how to make myself smaller. I picked up the phone and wrote one message. You're welcome here if you come with care. No assumptions. No expectations. I love you, but I won't disappear to make others comfortable. This time, the reply didn't come fast. It arrived 2 hours later. I understand. I don't expect anything. I just want to do better. I hope one day you'll feel okay letting me try. I read it twice. Then I put the phone down. There were no promises. But there was awareness. That was new. I stepped out onto the back deck. The lake shimmered. The light had changed softer now, less demanding. Henry brought out 2 chairs and a blanket. We sat in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because we were no longer speaking around other people's comfort. Later, if someone knocked, I'd decide whether to open the door. But for now, I didn't owe anyone an entry. I had already arrived.